I am thrilled to be able to bring this webinar to you of delivering dynamic cooking demonstrations with Liz Weiss. I am just thrilled to have kind of followed her career all along. But before we get started with that, what I'd like to do is introduce our Dairy Council team. And so Dairy Council hires a number of dietitians. So Tammy Baker is our general manager in Arizona. You also probably saw the Dairy Council of Arizona and Nevada combined. We work together, we coordinate together. We have a general manager in Arizona and another one in Nevada, and that is Libby Lovig. And chances are you have been working with many of us throughout the years, and we are thrilled to be able to work with our Nevada colleagues. In Arizona, the dietitians that we have are myself, Terry Verison, and I'm Vice President of Nutrition Education. We also have Patricia Johnson. She's our Vice President of Nutrition Services, and she runs the Feel Up to Play 60 program. And she will be interjecting as we have questions. So if you do have questions, please feel free to just post them in the chat. And Pat will maybe be able to answer them. And if not, we will ask Liz those questions as we go along. In Nevada, we have Jake Yarberry, who's our Nutrition Services Manager, and we have Jen McCune, who's our Nutrition Communications Manager, and they do all kinds of things within Nevada, just like we do here in Arizona. Anybody who's on the webinar is more than welcome to request a Dairy Good cookbook. It's a fabulous cookbook. You'll see in the chat a link to a Google form. You can give us your mailing address and we will ship one of those out to you. So that's just our gift for you participating in our webinar today. And with that, what I'd like to do is turn it over to Liz. As I mentioned, we're thrilled to have Liz Weiss here. She is the voice behind the food and nutrition blog and podcast titled Liz's Healthy Table. I highly encourage you to visit her website and see all the different things she has there. She's written several cookbooks focusing on family meals and child nutrition, including Color, Cook, Eat, No Wine with Dinner. And since this is focused on child nutrition, the wine has an H in it, even though the moms might want the wine without the H in it. And then also the Mom's Guide to Meal Makeovers. She's a sought after speaker, spokesperson, TV personality, and cooking instructor. She's currently a contributor to Today's Dietitian magazine and their blog, and she's a pioneer in the world of podcasting with her first show, Cooking with Moms, that was launched in 2008. And ran for nearly 10 years and 300 episodes. We are thrilled to have her with us today. And with that, please join me in welcoming Liz Weiss.
Thank you. Thank you, Terry. And I see people want to be admitted in, and I was actually admitting them in as you were doing the introduction. So I'm going to toss the admission to you. And I'm going to go ahead. All these all this technology. Hey, I'm a dietitian, but now I'm a Zoom expert. All right. I hope everybody can see my slides. It is an absolute thrill to be here. This was months in the making, but here we are. I'm in my home on Nantucket, Massachusetts, and I'm just so excited to be here. So the run of show today is that I'm going to go through slides, about a half an hour or so of slides. And then I'm going to do a cooking demo. I'm going to take all the learnings from today, and then we're going to do a cooking demo. And then if any of you are cooking along, just post a note in the chat. And then Pat, maybe at some point to say, hey, Liz, we have 10 people cooking along. But this is a demo with an optional cook along. So I really hope you're cooking along with me, because we're going to talk about best practices for doing a cooking demo, but especially a virtual cooking demo since we're all at home, right? All right, let's see. I've got to advance. Here we go. No disclosures to report, other than a hearty thank you to the Dairy Council of Arizona and Nevada for sponsoring this session today. All right, so here's our objectives, and I'm going to get rid of this grid here. I don't need to look at myself. All right, so we're going to just start out by identifying why cooking demos are so important when it comes to teaching our folks about nutrition. We're going to outline the steps required to plan and prepare and then adapt a cooking demonstration for various virtual venues and audiences. And by virtual, I mean Zoom, Instagram, and Facebook. And then I'm going to take all those learnings and I'm going to turn it into an actual demonstration. And the recipe I'm making today is a broccoli and cheese and bean soup. It is going to reinforce the message of the power of plants and dairy, which is really a dynamic duo. And as I'm cooking, I'll be sharing culinary messages and nutrition messages, and you'll see how it all comes together. All right, so the benefits of cooking demonstrations. Well, certainly they teach culinary competence and they teach healthy eating habits. This little girl lives in Boston. I worked and I still work for a program in the Boston area called Kids Cooking Green. And for years, we were in schools and community centers teaching kids about cooking. Now we're doing it virtually. But it was a 10-week class, and look how happy this little girl is. She's cooking with this beautiful bunch of fresh basil. These kids cooked with veggies and fruits. They loved everything. They tried everything. It was an incredible experience. And again, we continue doing that, albeit virtually. The benefits, it allows you to reach out and connect to your community. I've been doing a lot of cooking demos lately for parents groups of preschools. They found me, and it's just like I keep doing these cooking demos virtually for them. And then the benefits, it helps to promote your organization, your service, your product, your brand. Maybe you've written a new cookbook and you want to launch it by doing a Facebook Live or an Instagram Live, or maybe you'll invite people in to do a Zoom cooking class with you. So there's so many benefits to it. And of course, it is so much fun. So what I see when I see dietitians and nutrition professionals doing cooking demos, if you will, these cooking experiences, they really fall into what I see as three buckets. The first bucket is the hands-on. Now you can see me here on the left. I've got my computer like in my face. I'm up close and personal. I've got about 10 kiddos that I'm cooking with. I can see them. They can see me. I am supervising them. That's hands-on. You're like in the room with them, right? And quite often I'll say, go off mute because I want to hear them. I need to know what the action's all about. Of course, when little brother is practicing piano in the background, I do have to say, Susie, you need to mute. But anyway, hands-on, very up close and personal, demo style. On the right here, you see Mandy Enright. She's a dietitian in New Jersey. She does a lot of worksite wellness programming. She is now doing a lunch and learn with a corporation, maybe in New Jersey, maybe beyond, but it's a demo, straight up demo. She's looking at her phone, which is her camera. She's on Zoom. She's putting that demo out there to those employees, and they're sitting at home watching her. It's a little bit more of a one-way street, if you will. And then there's the demo with the optional cook along. Now, that's what we're going to do today. And a lot of those have been happening on Instagram and Facebook. For example, Sharon Palmer, plant-powered dietitian, every Thursday she does a demo on her Instagram Live. It's an optional cook along. She gives you the ingredients and the recipe the day before on her Instagram, just to kind of tease it. And it's much more participatory than just sitting there kind of watching it, if you will. And so, and I also see a lot of food companies doing this now, where they will invite you in, sort of like Nevada and Arizona Dairy is doing for you guys today. You're invited in to watch the demo, but also cook along and be part of it. So planning a successful virtual cooking experience. There are a lot of moving parts, trust me. I've been a busy bee since last night getting ready for this, but some of those things to consider. And a lot of what I share with you today really does relate to even if you are in person, because one day soon we're all going to be back to in person. And so these best practices will still apply. So the first thing you want to ask yourself is like, what platform am I using? Like today we're using Zoom. And Zoom is a little more intimate because usually, you're inviting people in, a lot of planning going into that to make sure everybody's got the link and the password and all that. There's also Instagram Live and there's Facebook Live. And those are great platforms for you as a nutrition educator and the expert to do your demo and send your messages out there to the world, essentially. In the past, we were in hospitals, schools, community centers. Now, of course, we're home, but we can still be in those places, right? Let's see, lighting and audio. Okay, kitchen lights, not the most flattering. If I'm doing a demo at night, really not the most flattering. And so I'm going to talk to you in a minute about lighting. What do you use for lighting? And boy, have I gotten a million questions about that. And I'll share with you some suggestions. And then there's audio. We will talk about that. When you're doing a cooking demo, sometimes there's sizzling and there's blending and you're turning your back because you're running over to the stove or you forgot something in your fridge. Audio is really important because people have to hear you. So we're going to talk about that. Your kitchen setup, depending on the type of demo you are doing, is really what's going to drive your setup. And I will tell you that this morning, I have a Zoom account. I got onto Zoom. I invited myself in and I practiced this morning and I made sure I had it set up just where I wanted it. So there's a lot of opportunity where you can practice beforehand to figure out where you're going to set up your device. Who's your audience? That's something we need to talk about. Recipes. What kind of recipes are you going to share with the world, with your audiences? And where are you getting those recipes? And then performance. You know, you're a registered dietitian, you're a nutrition professional. I say you've got some superpowers and you need to use those. So we're going to talk about that too. So I apparently have dressed to match Maya Feller here, as well as the anchor from Good Morning America, but I didn't plan it, nor did they, but I'm sharing this image for you because we're going to talk about lighting. Now, we're not going to talk about TV segments from home or cooking videos from home. We're talking about cooking demonstrations from home. And lighting is really important. So why I wanted to share this image is because I think Maya looks fantastic in this photograph. And she's using some very simple lighting techniques in her home kitchen, such that I think she looks as good as the anchor who's in the studio with all that professional lighting. So you can look great. I'm not saying we have to look like a TV star, but we want to look good and we want our food to look good. So how do we do it? In your handout packet, I did provide a list of the equipment that I have used and colleagues have used, and you can certainly check it out. There's a million ring lights out there. This is what you see on the left, a ring light, very simple light, very easy to move around. The ring light, gosh, it could be $40, $80, not that expensive. Many of them act as a tripod as well. So you can put your phone right in the middle of the ring light. Today I'm using an 18-inch ring light. It's a beautiful day on Nantucket. It's been cloudy for about a month. Sun came out. And so I don't need a ton of light today, but I'm going to use the ring light to just kind of amp it up a little bit. What does Maya use? Maya uses the light box with diffuser system. You could see that in the next image there. About $80. These are a little clunky to work with. I have them, but they are, because of that diffuser in the front, it kind of spreads that light in a very even fashion. When you're going with a ring light, if you wear glasses, you will see a reflection in your glasses. So some people prefer using those light boxes. Very inexpensive. You got to play around with them, but they work really well. Audio. I am a low tech kind of girl. I like to use AirPods, and you want to make sure they're fully charged before you get started. Some people will put one in and keep another one on charge if it's going to be a long demo, and then they just sort of swap them out. That's a little hack for you. But the AirPods or the knockoff earbuds, I think, are great. And that way, when you're moving around your kitchen and the blender's going, people can hear you. I don't think it's wise to rely upon the computer or the phone microphone. Have those AirPods. Now, there is something that some people use, and I'm going to show it to you. I don't know if you could see me, but it's on my list, and it is a wireless microphone. Now, the wireless microphone is something I will use if I'm doing a TV segment from home, or if I am doing a cooking video and I want like really good audio, but they're persnickety. Trust me, I would never use it for a cooking demo like this, because you stuff something in your back pocket. You got the wire here. They're persnickety. Trust me. I'm going for AirPods all the way. Finally, the Ethernet cable. I got a lot of cable. I hope I don't fall today. I got a lot of cables in my house, but I have gone off the Wi-Fi. I do not like to rely on the Wi-Fi for something as important as this. And so I have plugged the Ethernet cable into my computer. I have a little adapter. You always need an adapter. But it was like a $16 50-foot Ethernet cable, and it's hardwired in. So I'm off the Wi-Fi, and that way I know we're going to have good connection. Because I've been on some cooking demos, and it's really like grainy and it's cutting in and out. And I'll bet you all watch the nightly news and you see everybody's being interviewed from home now. And sometimes you're like, wow, they have a horrible connection. And it's just very disruptive. So definitely think about hardwiring in. Kitchen setup. Okay. Lots of options here. The placement of your device. What you see here in this top image is me doing that cooking class, the hands-on cooking class. And so I have the computer set up on a box with a few books, and it's sort of like, it's a little, not quite at eye level, but it's close. But when I use my computer in that situation, you can't see the food, right? Because the food is below me on the countertop. But I have a laptop and I can take that screen and I can move it up and down. And I mean, I don't want to get you dizzy, but I can move it down to show my cutting board and then back up to show me. I can see my class. And that's why I like to place it really close to me like that. But if I'm doing a demo like I'm doing today, I might have the computer further away. So it's like a wide shot. So you could see me and the counter the entire time. Same goes for the phone. You can use your phone on Zoom or Instagram or Facebook, set it up on your tripod. It's at a bit of a distance. If it's, maybe if it's Facebook, it might be at a bit of a different distance. It's harder to see your audience, but on Facebook, you don't really have an audience. So anyway, the computer, if you're using your computer, you can set it up close by or a little further away. Now, here's where it gets a little bit interesting. Here's another hack. Lower right image. That is the kitchen of, oh my gosh, now her name, it'll come to me in 2 seconds. This is what happens when I have too much circling around in my brain. Oh, Carmen Meyer. And Carmen lives in Nashville, Tennessee, and she works for Airbnb Virtual Experiences. And she does cooking classes for people all around the world. So in her kitchen, she likes to set up her computer as her main camera. And you could see it in the distance beyond her sink. It's picking up Carmen and a little bit of her counter, but it's not quite far enough to see everything really clearly. So what she likes to do is she likes to use a second device. She just logs into Zoom from her tablet. You could do it from your phone as well. And this way she has her main camera, which is her laptop, capturing the wide shot. And then she has this constant close-up shot that's coming from her second device. And we're going to do that today. We're actually going to use a wide shot with my laptop, and you're going to see me in my kitchen. And then I have my phone set up on a tripod, logged into Zoom, just like you guys logged into Zoom. Oh, here's a little tip. When you log in with a second device, tablet or phone, make sure you do not log in with audio, because then there'll be too much feedback between the two devices. So just log in with video only. And then so what Terry's going to do later is she's going to spotlight the wide shot camera and the close-up camera. So you'll get to see me in action on a wide shot, but you'll also get to see the close-up action on that close-up camera. So I hope that makes sense. It's a little bit, you have to play with it a little bit, but it's kind of a cool little Zoom hack, if you will. Obviously, kitchen setup, you need all your basic, cutting boards, trays, sharp knives. And the beauty of doing cooking demos virtually from home is that I invariably forget something when I'm going on location to do a cooking demo. One time I was making pancakes from one of my cookbooks. I forgot the nonstick cooking spray and I needed it. It's like there's always something, right? So you're at home, it's all there for you. You want to have like a scraps bowl or a compost bin or something to kind of keep your area clean as you go. And then be mindful of what's behind you, because we are communicating nutrition. So fruits, veggies, bowls of pretty things behind you, flowers. We're also communicating cleanliness and food safety. So dirty dish towels and the like behind you, dirty dishes, it's not a good look. So be mindful of what's behind you. And while I'm thinking of cleanliness and all that, when you're cooking, really be careful and think about like not touching your hair constantly or touching your face. It's a hard habit to break, but people pick up on that kind of stuff. So it's just something I like to remind people about. And just showing you here what my kitchen looks like when I'm doing that really like up close and personal cooking class where I need to see the group. And you can see on a wide shot here, I'm using 2 ring lights. I've got my computer set up on a box. I'm going to move that screen up and down so you could see me, you could see my cutting board. And then you could see the other side of it, what it looks like, behind the box there. I also have an electric skillet I like to use, and that way it keeps everything kind of in one place for me. But now that I have those AirPods, I feel like I have a little more mobility, right? So it's kind of liberating when you have the AirPods, you can move around a little bit more. People will often ask me, what do you do if you have a tiny kitchen? Well, this is my intern here on the left, my former intern, Lin Fei Chen from Boston University. And we did a lot of recipe development together during the internship. So we would Zoom and we would cook together. And I would just carry my computer around my kitchen. And you can do that. You can carry it around, you can move it. It's a little wonky if you've got lots of cables and the like set up. But when Lin Fei and I were Zooming together, we didn't need it to be too fancy. But feel free to move around as you go. And then on the right, you see me here doing an Instagram live. And with Instagram, your phone is going to be on a tripod. That's just a cheapo little selfie stick. I got the ring light there, making everything looks nice. And I've got the phone on a selfie stick, which is also a tripod. And then I can move that phone around a little bit. I can tilt it up. People can see me. I can tilt it down a little bit so you could see the food on the cutting board. Again, you're going to play around with these things, but having, that flexibility to move around is kind of nice. This is a little video. You might not be able to hear it, but I'm going to just show you a very cute little fast-paced video of me setting up my kitchen. There's my Ethernet cable. So let's see if we can get this to play. I'm silly. All right. So you could see how I was moving that screen up and down a little bit. You see, it's just like not that easy, people, but that made it look easy. All right, let's talk about audience. You obviously need to know the age of your audience and the gender. Is this a Boy Scout group, Girl Scout group? All important questions to ask. Food budget, something you want to be really mindful of, especially now. It's been a challenging year for a lot of people, so be mindful of budgets. And cooking skills. Are you doing a 4-part cooking series? Maybe week 1 is knife skills, and you're showing people basic cutting and slicing and dicing, techniques. So what are their cooking skills before you jump into a class that might be too advanced? Culinary, cultural preferences and allergies. I've, at the beginning of COVID, did a bunch of cooking classes for my temple, and I'm not going to make a pork recipe. Let's leave it at that, right? Allergies with kids cooking green. Whenever we were in a school, obviously it was a no nut policy, but now that everybody's cooking from home, we've started to include recipes with nuts, always giving an alternative if there happens to be a family that is nut free, but you need to know those things as well. Medical conditions, is it a cardiac class? Maybe you're doing recipes that align with the DASH diet. Is it for cancer patients? Knowing that is obviously critical. A number of attendees. When I am doing a hands-on class, and you can see a picture here of a hands-on class, that's Lori DeLiso up there in the green, the founder of Kids Cooking Green. When you're doing that, maybe 10, 12 squares in all. You don't want to have too many people because again, you're really supervising them. But today, whether there's 5 people on this call or 1,000 today, doesn't impact me at all and doesn't impact how I'm going to go about doing the demo. So it's really more for the hands-on that you need to know the numbers. And then of course, with any class, map it out, your lesson plan, your goals, your objectives. What do you hope to accomplish during your class? This is the recipe we're going to make today. It is a cheesy bean and broccoli soup. But I thought I would talk a little bit about recipes because there's some themes that have really risen to the top during COVID, including family meals, because we know everybody's home cooking. So yay, family meals are back. It's something that's near and dear to my heart. So I'm happy about that. But recipes that resonate with families, especially who are cooking constantly, is this idea of cooking once and dining twice. So making a recipe where you're going to have leftovers. Breakfast for dinner is always a popular one. Who does not love a cheese omelet? Nothing's easier for dinner. You don't have to have it just for breakfast. Batch cooking, those are meals very, very popular right now. Immunity, recipes that contain zinc, vitamin D, vitamin C. People are hungry for immunity enhancing recipes. nutrient density with the dietary guidelines that came out in the new year. We're going to be talking today, our theme for our cooking demo today is plants plus dairy, a dynamic duo, and it ties in really nicely with the new DGAs. Pantry meals. Today's recipe is pretty much a pantry meal, and it's an easy one, right? If you're into meal planning, I mean, these are easy things to keep in the fridge, freezer, and pantry in terms of ingredients. One pot dinners, those kinds of recipes are very popular, as are better baking recipes, because everybody was baking so much, especially early on in COVID. So people are very interested in lightened up versions of their favorite baked goods. Where do you get the recipes? Where do you source the recipes? This is a question I get all the time. Okay, let's say you're doing a cooking class for a group of preschool moms in your community and preschool dads, parents, and caregivers, and you found a fabulous recipe in Eating Well magazine. Can you just take that and reprint it and send it out to the group? You could, but best practices, what I would say is find the recipe you love, make it, tweak it, and rewrite it so it's kind of in your words, and then credit Eating Well. This recipe was inspired by Eating Well. Here's the original recipe, but these are my tweaks, and here's why I made these little changes. So always credit. If you find a recipe on my website that you love, you can email me. Hey, Liz, I really want to use such and such a recipe for this cooking demo. I'll be like, fine, that's great. But do me a favor and just credit me and maybe provide a hyperlink to me when you print off that recipe or when you send that recipe to participants. So credit where credit is due. And I will put a plug in for the Dairy Council or any other councils or commodity boards. They all have websites filled with fantastic recipes. So go there, search around, see what you see. And if there's a recipe you love, make it. Try it out, tweak it a little bit, and credit that source. But those recipes are there for the taking. So don't forget that those are fantastic resources for you. When you're communicating with your participants, let's say you're doing a Zoom cooking class, I provided for you in the handout packet a teacher template, and in it, I include things that you could send to participants. You could send them an email and say, hey, here's some things to consider for this recipe. We only have a half hour, so I want you to have everything ready and made ahead of time so we can jump right in. It's kind of what I did with you guys today. I'm going to give you a grocery list in there, an equipment list. You need to have a microplane, but if you don't have a microplane, you can use a vegetable peeler. These are things you want to tell people. You certainly want to send people the recipes. And then in some cases, a gift card, a goodie box. You guys are going to get that cookbook, which is so cool. So there's fun ways to incentivize and excite people in terms of, sending little gifts and things like that, if there's a budget for it. If you're doing Instagram Live or Facebook Live, you want to tease it the day ahead of time. Hey, everybody, tomorrow at 3:00, I'm going to be on my Facebook demonstrating this cheesy broccoli soup. Join me. And then that morning, tease it again. And if you want people to cook along, make sure they have the ingredients and the recipe ahead of time. You could post it right there on your Instagram or on your Facebook. So that stuff has to be teased ahead of time if you want people to join in. And, the more you can share it out there and tease it, the better. You got to be prepared. You want to make sure that you and your food are visible, which is why I talked about sort of that kitchen setup. You want to use clear bowls. Certainly practice and time things out. We might go a little heavy on time today, so I will say that if you have burning questions, post them in the chat. And then while our soup is cooking today, it needs about 10 minutes to kind of bubble. Pat's going to toss a bunch of your questions my way because I can cook and talk and think at the same time. So we're gonna save some time by doing that. Be ready with your talking points, your nutrition talking points, your culinary talking points, your ingredients, your process. I have created a cheat sheet that I also put in your handout packet. And that cheat sheet is something that I am looking at it. It's sitting over there on my cutting board, and I will be referring to it as I'm cooking today, because it's like, oh yeah, I wanted to tell them about such and such. And I have it on the cheat sheet just to remind me, to jog my memory. And I do that for all my cooking demos. I always have a cheat sheet. Declutter as you go. Mise en place means everything in its place, have everything organized ahead of time so that you're not like scrambling to chop an onion, for example, unless you want to show people how to chop an onion. And then have the finished dish at the ready if you're baking. I don't have the finished soup today because I figured we're going to cook that together. But if I was baking, I would have had to have the baked good, already done, because something goes in the oven and then magically something comes out of the oven. And then your class flow, always, whether you're doing a Zoom demo or even you're in person, you're on Instagram, always introduce yourself and then review the ground rules. On Zoom, we'll often say, put yourself on mute. If you have a question, you can come off mute, or put yourself on mute. If you have a question, put it in the chat. And Pat is going to toss questions my way because I won't be able to cook and think and talk and read the chat at the same time. That's for sure. Hashtag. Today we do have a hashtag. Have a plant with dairy is the hashtag. So if there's a hashtag you want people to share, if they're going to share on social media, maybe you're going to take pictures of your screen as I'm cooking today, or maybe you're going to take pictures of your finished soup today and you want to share it on Instagram, have a plant with dairy. And on Instagram, I'm at Liz Weiss. And you could always tag me. Tag away. And then, you could always review the recipe ahead of time, like at the very beginning, and anything that needs to happen right away. You want to say to people, come on, let's go. Let's get that onion cooking right away. And then performance. This is so important. We are educators, we are dietitians, and we love sharing all the facts, the nutrition, all that good stuff. But we really want to entertain as well, because people are home, they're staring at the computer all day, and you want to be like, whoa, you want to have some fun, right? So have that energy, entertain, be engaging, ask open-ended questions, because it's great. Like, especially if you're doing like an Instagram live, you ask questions, people are typing, and you're actually like cooking, you're looking at your screen, you're talking. It's just so much more fun to be interactive than to be like, just like staring at a screen all day. So keep it really interactive. And then I always say, be ready with a story or two. Yes, you're a dietitian, that's cool, but people kind of want to get to know you and they want to hear a little story. So think about stories and how you can weave that into your demonstration. And then use your superpowers as a nutrition professional. And by superpowers, I mean, show me the science, right? Like, we're also good with science. So, use science to amplify, your demo and your messaging, but make sure it's evidence-based. So let me give you an example. How many times have you heard on the news, eat this because it will boost your immune system, and that is an immune booster? Well, there's really no such thing as an immune booster. We can say it in a more appropriate way by saying, vitamin C has been shown to support a healthy immune system. The vitamin D in milk supports a healthy immune system. So that's the way to frame that. So use the science to your advantage. Avoid stereotypes. By that, I mean, I use family meals. I'll use that as an example. I love family meals, and I talk about families all the time. But a family does not just have to be the mom and the dad and the son and the daughter. I'm an empty nester. My kids come and go. When they're hungry, really hungry, they come visit. But I'm an empty nester. And so, we're still a family. Or you can be a single person or a single parent. You're still a family. So we want to be all inclusive. We always want to define ambiguous terms. We're going to talk about plant-based today when we're making our soup. I will tell you right now, plant-based for me does not mean vegan. Plant-based means plant-forward. So if you're going to use terms like that, define it. So it's a diet that's like a Mediterranean diet or a vegetarian diet, and it's very plant-forward, but there's dairy and there's eggs and there's meat and there's fish. That's my idea of a plant-based diet. Always be credible and compassionate, trustworthy, empathetic. We really need to show empathy right now. It's been a tough year for so many people. And so the more we can be understanding and be good listeners, the better. I always say adjust your lens. So look through the eyes of those you are teaching and working with and interacting with, because, everybody's got a different story. And we all come from different places. So we have to look through their eyes. So I always like to remind people of that. So, all right, we're about to get cooking. Today, we're going to make cheesy broccoli and white bean soup. And the way I'm framing this demo is that we're going to talk about nutrient density and the power of plants and dairy. The dietary guidelines came out, so that's a great hook for any demo. We know from the dietary guidelines that vegetarian eating patterns and Mediterranean eating patterns are recommended. So we'll tie it to that. We'll talk about all the plants in this recipe and all the dairy in this recipe, and that they come together. They're like this great dynamic duo. We will talk about the nutrients and why they're so important. There's a lot of shortfall nutrients out there. Dairy helps to fill those gaps. And then this is a hearty soup that's really great for busy weeknights, and you always have leftovers. So that's something I always appreciate. And then if you have questions, type them into the chat. Just here's real quick, this is my, Twitter, Facebook, a reminder of the hashtag, and my Instagram at Liz Weiss. So that's there for you. But now I'm going to go off screen share. Let's get those glasses on. And what I'm going to do now is, this is the fun part. All right, now what I'm going to do is turn my ring light on. Okay, I have a ring light right here. And I'm going to turn my computer around. And I'm going to spend a moment messing around with this. And I'm going to ask, there we go. And I think what Terry's going to do now is she's going to spotlight me. And she's also going to spotlight my second camera, which is right here. So I'm going to turn the video on. Okay. So as I said, checking my clock there. I have a clock. So normally I have my phone here and I'm using my phone. All right, let's get going. If you have questions, definitely ask them throughout. I can stick around after. I don't have to hop off exactly at 2 o'clock my time. So feel free to ask. Okay, so hey, everybody. Good to see you. Liz Weiss here with Liz's Healthy Table. And I'm just so excited that the Dairy Council of Nevada and Arizona invited me to be here today. I'm going to just tweak my camera a little bit over there and pan down because I want you to be able to see everything that I'm doing. I think that might be a little bit better. So today we're going to make a recipe for cheesy broccoli and white bean soup. And I love this recipe. It serves 6, but it's a great recipe because so many people are looking for recipes they can make and have leftovers the next day. That's one reason among many why I love this recipe so much. I'm just gonna, I have an onion here, I have a garlic here, and everything's so smelly, but in a good way. But I've had everything covered up to get ready for our class today. All right, so the first thing I want to do before we get into too deep into the demo is we have to saute some onions. All right, so we're going to saute some onions and some garlic to get us going. And after that, we're going to add frozen broccoli and beans and a carrot. And I'm going to shred this and I'm going to show you how I do that. And we're going to add milk, 2% milk. And then we're going to also add some broth. And make sure you like that shot there. We're going to add some vegetable broth. And we're going to just let that kind of bubble and go. And while that's in there, I'm going to show you how to zest a lemon, because a lot of people will ask me, what's the best way to zest a lemon? And then we're going to talk about nutrition. We're going to talk about this recipe. And at the end, we're going to actually season it a little bit more, lemon zest, some other seasonings, but we're going to blend it. Now, we're not going to blend it all. This is how I feel about blending. You can get an immersion blender and get it in there and blend the whole soup. You can blend half the soup, which is what I'm going to do, or you could just eat it as is. Not everybody has a blender. Not everybody has an immersion blender. Some people don't want to be bothered. So this is a recipe that is so flexible, besides being so healthy. So the first things first, let's get some heat on. So this is a Dutch oven. You can use a Dutch oven. You can use just a sauce pot. And you want to get it to like a medium-low heat. And what we want to do is we want to heat up. Let me just make sure too. I'm just going to tweak that a little bit. Yeah. All right. So what I want to do is heat up a tablespoon of olive oil. Now, if you're cooking along with me, and I hope you are, just melt a tablespoon of olive oil. Sometimes I eyeball things. I go through so much olive oil. Okay. Now, of course, it's brand new and I can't get it off. Oh, there we go. Oh, people, I need to exercise more. Wow. All right. I actually have been exercising on the Peloton. We got a Peloton. I'm not an exerciser. I love eating a healthy diet, but I do find exercise to be a challenge. And, but I have been doing that more lately, which is great. All right, so we're going to heat up our olive oil in our pot. And as soon as that heat comes up, see, these things are just take a little longer to go. We're going to bring that up to a heat, to like a medium low, and we're going to saute an onion. Now, this is a small onion, and I sliced it in half and I peeled it, and then I just cut it into little half moon shapes. And, easy, right? So I'm not dicing it, I'm not mincing it, just half moon shapes, right? Very simply. So I'm going to add that, even though that really hasn't come up to the temperature I wanted it to just yet, but I want to get it going. So I'm going to crank that heat right up. I might transfer this behind me just to get it going. That's what I'm going to do. Yeah, why not? Let's go ahead and put that back here, and we'll get that going. And if you're cooking with me, there we go. That's better. This guy just didn't want, I'm going to still put the heat on just to get it. It took a little longer to heat up. Modern technology. So while our onion is heating up, I just wanted to talk to you about garlic real quick, because once that onion caramelizes just a little bit, it takes about 4 minutes, we're going to add a garlic clove. Now, I got to tell you, years ago, may he rest in peace, I read Anthony Bourdain's book, Kitchen Confidential. I don't know if anybody out there has read that book, but it's hilarious. But he does talk in the book about how he would never use a garlic press to crush garlic. He'll mince it and use a sharp knife. And I felt very guilty after that. I said, oh my gosh, I'm never using the garlic press again. I felt horrible about it. Well, I have a chef that I love named Yotam Ottolenghi, and I'm doing his master class right now, and I have all his cookbooks. And during his master class, every time he'll say, I'm not going to sit here and chop garlic all day. I'm using a garlic press. And I thought, finally, I can use a garlic press. I can't tell you the weight it took off my shoulders, but I don't like this like food elitism, where you're like, you must use a knife, you can't use a garlic press. This is silly. We want to make life easy for everybody, right? We want to make life nutritious for everybody. And that's why I love this recipe. All right, I'm coming back over here. I love this recipe because it's plants and it's dairy. And, if you look at the dietary guidelines, the new DGAs, they talk about healthy eating styles. And there's a few of them, right? There's vegetarian, there's Mediterranean, there's plenty more, but those are my two favorites. And within those two diets, plants take center stage, and so does dairy. And they really are a dynamic duo. In this recipe, we have 3 plants. We've got frozen broccoli, we have beans, we have carrot, and then we have milk. We're using 2% milk, and we've got cheese, a cup of shredded cheese. They work together in terms of flavor. They work together in terms of nutrition. There's shortfall nutrients out there, potassium, fiber. You don't get fiber in dairy, but potassium, fiber, vitamin D, calcium, and dairy will help you meet your needs with 3 out of the 4 of those. So I'm cooking up my onion, and if you guys are cooking along, how's it going? Pat, do we have anybody else cooking along, or is it just little old Liz today cooking?
I'm not hearing from anyone that they're cooking along, but
come on,
people!
Breaking my heart. Breaking my heart. That's
need
okay.
some questions. I need questions.
Somebody must have a question. All right, so I'm cooking away at our onion here, and it's going to soften up. Show you. Looking at my close-up cam here, you can see right in there. And I'm going to speed things along just a little bit, and I'm going to crush that garlic clove. No more sharp knife for me. Add that garlic. And over here to my left, I've got a platter, and I'm just adding all my dirty stuff over there just to kind of keep it out of the way so that I stay nice and tidy over here. So when it comes to your garlic, you want to saute it for just about 30 seconds or so, because I don't know about you, but I don't like the taste of burnt garlic. It's quite unpleasant. And so we definitely don't want to be doing that. So while that's sauteing up a little bit there, we're going to get ready to add our other ingredients. So this could be a cream of broccoli soup. And I say cream, there's no cream. The beans add that creaminess. The cheese adds that creaminess. Or you could serve it without pureeing it at all, or you could puree half of it. So you've got a little bit of that creaminess and that thickness from pureeing half, and then the rest, you get those nice pieces of the broccoli. And I am all for convenience. And so I love to keep frozen broccoli in the freezer all the time. I rely on frozen veggies constantly. It's kind of like nature's pause button. You pick it, you freeze it, and there's like no transportation. I mean, yes, it comes on a truck from, say, California, but it's been frozen the whole time. So you can use fresh as well. And for convenience, sometimes you can buy the bag of the broccoli florets. It's done for you. It's so easy. And you know what they're doing with the stems now? They're turning it into either like a slaw, or now you can get the frozen cauliflower and broccoli rice. The rice, kind of nice. Okay. So I'm adding the broccoli. I'm adding a can of beans. This is cannellini beans. I drained and rinsed them. Washes away 40% of the sodium. I did reserve a few beans I'm keeping on the side because behind me, I have kind of a little build your own soup bar set up, because when I serve soup for dinner, I want to add toppings to it. And so you can add beans, you could add yogurt, you could add cheese, you could add herbs. So I did reserve a few of the beans, but we're going to add those. Stir that up. And then I'm going to crank the heat up a little bit too. I'm going to add some vegetable broth. So I've got 2 cups of vegetable broth. And what I use for my vegetable broth is, let me show you. I use bouillon, but I use sort of a low sodium, healthier version of a bouillon, minimal ingredients. I think I got that at Trader Joe's. And so basically you just boil up 2 cups of water, you add the bouillon, stir it all up. So, it's not like you have to go out and buy a whole thing of vegetable broth, which is usually 32 ounces, but it's right there for you. It's so easy. So that's going in, crank the heat. And then because I like to have sort of a soup with like a creaminess, if you will, I'm adding 2% reduced fat milk. So in that goes. All right. I love dairy. My husband grew up in England, and so he is like hardcore into dairy. He goes through a lot of dairy. And we know dairy is part of the DASH diet. We know that it's, involved in helping lower blood pressure. It's so important because it's a great source of calcium and vitamin D. So for kids and growing kids, bones, you got, strong bones, you got to have your calcium. All right, I'm stirring this up. Best laid plans. I'm going to transfer this back to the burner behind me because this is just taking too long and that's aggravating me, but I'm going to keep the heat on. All right, let's put this back here. And what I want to do is I want to just bring it to a boil. I'm going to cover it. As soon as it comes to a boil, I am going to lower the heat. So it's just going to simmer and just kind of bubble a little bit. While that's going, we do have one more ingredient to add, and that's our carrot. I love to add vegetables to everything I make. And so we know this recipe has beans. Beans are technically a vegetable. We know we have our broccoli, but I'm adding a carrot. I peeled a medium carrot. This is a box grater. Every grandmother in the country has a box grater pretty much, which means it gets passed down to every mom and every granddaughter and grandson. So everybody's got a box grater. Maybe not everybody, but a lot of people do. This is the large holes of a box grater. Now I've timed myself doing this, and I know it takes 1 minute to peel and shred a carrot on the large holes of a box grater.
Hey, Liz, we have a question from
Yes.
Mary Wilson. She wants to know, how do you switch to the close-up camera? Like switching back and forth between the two views.
Okay. I don't. So what we're doing here, if you went out and bought software, there is software you can buy, It's called Sling Studio, and it's not cheap. There's a big learning curve. So if you were to get like Sling Studio, you would be able to switch between cameras. Jean Petrucci does that beautifully. I do not do that for this purpose because wait a minute, take the lid off. So what I'm doing instead of switching from one to the other is I have a moderator here, and that would be Terry. And Terry's the one who's organized the call, and she's able to spotlight my two cameras. So I am using two cameras. I'm using two devices. I'm using my laptop for the wide shot, and that's what's in a distance here, set up on a bunch of boxes on a counter stool. And then my second camera is my phone, which is here to my right on a tripod. And that's just giving us this angle. You could see it here looking down. So I'm not switching back and forth, but rather we have both cameras wide open the whole time, if that makes sense. Is that clear? But yeah, you could definitely invest in something like a Sling Studio, but it's definitely, it's an investment, and there is that learning curve. When I'm doing a cooking demo or a cooking class, personally, my favorite placement for the device, the computer, is right here, as I showed you, because I want to see myself, see the action, and again, I'm panning up and down. But for today, I thought, let's do a wide shot and show you how I use that second camera to give us this close up here.
And
so I hope
as
that makes
the
sense.
moderator, I have the option of switching her spotlights from one to the other, back to the first one, back to the close up, back to the wide. We decided ahead of time that having both of them spotlighted at the same time would be less distracting, and it would be just a better flow for the session. So they're both spotlighted at the same time, and then you can see both of them at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The one other ingredient that I did not add that I need to add to my soup is Dijon mustard. So in this soup, it calls for tarragon. Tarragon, I believe, is one of these underutilized, underappreciated herbs. It smells almost licorice, a little like licorice, used a lot in French cooking. So when I decided to add Dijon to the soup to kind of amp up the flavor, I thought, I'm going to add some fresh tarragon as well. And then I had some basil in my fridge, so I chopped that up, and I thought, I'm just going to add some basil and some tarragon. And that's the beauty of herbs. You can kind of mix and match. You might have some parsley. Maybe you've got some mint. Oh, mint would be so good in this soup. So I'm just going to go and add a tablespoon of Dijon, or Dijon, as we say.
So Liz, while you're doing that,
yes.
We have a couple more technical questions.
Yes.
One is, two questions. Are phone calls distracting if you use your phone? And when you use your phone as the second view, do you use Wi-Fi or do you use cellular data, since it's not hardwired like the computer?
Well, thank you for reminding me, because I was had so many, balls in the air today that I forgot to put this phone on Do Not Disturb. So I really hope I don't get a text or a phone call that comes in, because it might, and I'm not messing with it now. But the reason I hadn't put it on Do Not Disturb was because I thought, oh gosh, what if I can't get onto Zoom and Terry needs to call me, or I need to call her, I need a phone. But typically you do want to put it on Do Not Disturb. The second thing is that I have one Ethernet cable, which I'm using for my main device, which is my laptop. This phone is off the Wi-Fi right now. And if this phone were to go down or get wonky, wouldn't be the end of the world, because we would just stick to our wide shot and I'd be showing you all the close-up stuff just like that. I would just be leaning into it. So let me just move this back because I want you to see it. So so this is kind of bubbling a little bit now, and I'll show it to you in a minute. So that second device probably will not be hardwired in, because there's just so many cables, one can cope with in one's life. But I think we're okay with that. Any other questions? And I hope that answered it. I'm going to add my herbs in a little bit. I'm not going to add them now. And I've got some cheese I'm also going to add to the soup. So while this is bubbling, as soon as it bubbles for like 10 minutes, the carrots cook, the broccoli cooks, we're going to add a cup of shredded cheese. We're going to add our fresh herbs, and then we'll go ahead and puree half of it. or maybe we won't. Maybe we'll just keep it whole. And I'll tell you my little hack for pureeing as well. All right, one more thing I want to show you, and that is Zestina Lemon. This is a microplane, and I've got another one back here. I have 2 microplanes. I do love microplanes, so I'm going to hold them up and show you here on the close-up camera so you can see them. So the microplane is what I use to zest lemons, limes, oranges, any kind of citrus. I'm going to lower this because I just want it to simmer. I don't need it to boil, but I want it to just simmer. Okay, that looks good. My kitchen smells great. So to zest, you just place your zester, your microplane, on the counter like that, and then you just remove the outer part of the lemon. You don't want that pithy part, that white part underneath, because that can be bitter. But the microplane is truly the easiest way to zest. I always say don't be an overzealous zester because you don't want that white pithy part. The other way to zest, if you don't have a microplane, and these are fairly inexpensive, you can find them at the supermarket, is a vegetable peeler. Just take your everyday vegetable peeler, hold the citrus in your hand, and then just peel off the outer layer. And it comes off very simply. Look at that. So let me show this to you. So we're peeling off that outer layer. Didn't really get any of that pithy part. And then I'm going to lay this on my cutting board, and I'm just going to chop up the zest. Very simple. Watching those fingers. I always say to kids, hold the fingers, like a claw, like that. And you can zest that way. Now, when you're making any recipe, I always like to remind people, you can add, but you can't take out. So if you were to add the zest of an entire lemon, you might say, oh my gosh, I added too much lemon zest. I don't like my soup anymore. Rather, just add the zest of half a lemon. And then at the end, when you're seasoning, you can adjust. You can add more salt and pepper. You can add red pepper flakes. You can add, see, of course, now that's super hot. You can add more herbs. And that's the beauty of playing around with a recipe. Okay.
And Liz, we are coming to the end of our hour, so I'm going to unspotlight both of your cameras.
Okay.
And people can switch to the grid mode. We either call it the Brady Bunch or the Hollywood Squares. And if you have it, who's cooked along? Has anybody cooked along with Liz and have soup they want to show?
And just so while we're doing that, I've turned this to, I'm going to turn this off. I'm going to add my lemon zest. I'm adding my cup of cheese. I'm adding my herbs. I'm going to add a little bit of red pepper flakes. And at the end, I'll add some salt and pepper just to get a little bit of heat.
You have one more question, Liz. If you live
Yes.
if you live in a really noisy neighborhood, how do you cancel out that background noise?
Well, there is a backhoe next door. And there is some construction. Of course, it showed up today of all days, and it did stop, thankfully. But I think a lot of times when you think you're in a noisy neighborhood, and you are in a noisy neighborhood, you think that everybody else hears it, but it's not as loud as you would think. So right now I have these AirPods in, and it's pretty directional, in terms of picking up my audio. And I don't think, even if the backhoe, I'm looking at him, even if he was in action next door, beep, beep, I don't think you'd hear it. So we often think it's loud, but in reality, it really isn't. And, this is where you can practice. You can ask a friend or a colleague, hey, can you Zoom with me later today? I want to really just start practicing this. Where do I put my computer? Where should I set up that ring light? Do I need a ring light? Oh, maybe I look fine with my kitchen lights. It's a sunny day. Everything's great. So practice a little bit. And once you practice, then you can really get down to the business of cooking. And now in here, I've got my cheese that's melting. And what I will do, and I'm just going to give you my last little tip. I don't know if you can see here, this pot is hot. What I will normally do, and I'm not going to do this with you because I know a lot of you have to run, but I just want to show you one little tip, one little hack. When you are blending something, a hot liquid, what you want to do is you want to take the lid off the blender You want to let your liquid cool down just a little bit. For this soup, I'm going to add half the soup to the blender because I'm only going to blend half of it. But I don't want to put the lid on and blend because there's so much steam in there. It might kind of like blow up a little bit. So what I do is I take the top of the lid off. So there's this big hole in there. And I'm certainly not going to blend that way because everything's going to blow out of it. I just take a paper towel, put it on top of the blender, and blend that way so that the steam can escape, but no one's going to get injured or burned. And that's the best way to do it. And then, you've got your pureed soup, it goes in the pot. And then I like to take a little bit of milk, swirl it in the blender to pick up all those bits that are left over, and then pour that into the pot. So there's no waste. Because you know how blending can be a little irritating like that. It's like, oh, half the soup is stuck in here. Swirl it around, pop it in, and then you are done. So that is our soup. Plants plus dairy, a dynamic duo, and a delicious soup that you can serve tonight and then leftovers tomorrow. So now I know what I'm having for dinner tonight. And then what I like to do too is set out a bar at the end. And I will just show you, my little bar has some Greek yogurt, some of those beans, a little more cheese. And then this is Brussels sprouts. I had cooked up some Brussels sprouts, and how some of those leaves come off and they're nice and crispy. I thought that'll be a nice topping, and then some Greek yogurt. So you can let everybody at your table decorate their own soup and just add a little fun to mealtime. So thank you so much, everybody. If you have any questions, you can always email me, liz@lizshealthytable.com. And I do have a Q&A that I put together a few months ago on cooking demos. So if you have any pressing questions, the answers are probably in that Q&A, and I'm happy to send that along to you.
And we do have just a reminder that if you'd like a Dairy Good cookbook, this recipe is not in the cookbook, but we've put it in the Dropbox folder. So you can access it through the Dropbox folder, which also the link is in the chat, and I can post that again. So click the link in the chat for the Dairy Good cookbook. And for your certificates, we will email you, everybody that attended, we will email you a link with an evaluation and a link to the certificate. Now you get a continuing education credit for the live session. If you have colleagues that would have liked to have been on because we had pre-approval, you can also get a certificate for the recorded session. It will probably take about a week to be able to get that up, but that will be available. I used a randomizer to identify 5 people to get this fabulous goodie box full of all kinds of dairy things like cutting boards and a box grater and a soup ladle and a variety of different things. So we will check to make sure that Rachel, Johanna, Diane, Andy, and Yolis are on the session, and then I will email you and get your shipping address, and we will ship that to our winners. And I do have a list of alternates in case they weren't on, so we'll get that going as well. And as I said, I do encourage you to connect not just to Liz at Liz's Healthy Table, but to your local Arizona and Nevada Dairy Council on all the variety of different social medias. And we thank you so much for joining us. And we will look forward to future sessions as we plan more webinars and get more continuing education. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.